I stared at my reflection in the mirror, adjusting the delicate lace dress that had belonged to my mother. It was a vintage piece, handed down from her wedding day, with intricate embroidery that caught the light like fresh snowflakes. "Wow, you look so beautiful today," Brandon said, his eyes lighting up as he stepped into the room. "This dress suits you perfectly." I smiled faintly, touching the fabric. It was a gift from my dad to Mom on their wedding day. Wearing it feels like she's here with us, witnessing this. Brandon nodded, but his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He glanced at it, his expression shifting. We were at his parents' house for a Valentine's Day dinner, meant to finalize our engagement plans after 8 years together. My mom, Scarlett, had come along, her frail frame bundled in a thin coat, despite the biting Denver winter. She had heart issues, and the cold always made her uncomfortable, but she insisted on being there. "Are you okay, Mom?" I asked as we prepared to leave after the meal. She nodded weakly. "I'm fine, Riley. Just a bit chilly." Brandon's phone rang again. "Riley, I have something urgent to deal with. Why don't you and your mom take a taxi back? I'll call one for you." I frowned, glancing at Scarlett. "But look at what Mom's wearing. It's freezing out there. She can't handle the cold with her condition." He waved it off. "It's okay, Scarlett. I'm really in a hurry." Mom touched my arm gently. "Go ahead, Brandon. We'll manage." But as he drove off, leaving us on the snowy sidewalk, a knot formed in my stomach. "Mom, are you cold?" I asked, rubbing her arms. "No, dear, I'm not cold," she lied, her teeth chattering. We waited for the taxi, but the wind howled, whipping snow around us. Mom's face paled, and suddenly she clutched her chest. "Mom, what's wrong?" Panic surged through me as she gasped for air. "Heart attack," she whispered. I fumbled for my phone, dialing Brandon desperately. "Pick up. There's a first aid kit in your car. If you come back now, we can save her." But he didn't answer. Finally, on the third try, "Riley, I said I have something to do. I called the taxi. Can't you understand?" His voice was sharp, dismissive. "But Mom," the line went dead. Scarlett collapsed into my arms, her body going limp. "Mom, I'm sorry," I sobbed, holding her as sirens wailed in the distance. Paramedics arrived too late. "She's gone," one said softly. The world blurred as grief crashed over me. Brandon had left us there, prioritizing whatever urgent matter. Later, I learned it was meeting his childhood friend, Mia, for a Valentine's date. Ha ha ha. The irony burned. For him, what did I mean? Nothing, apparently. He'd abandoned us in the snow, and now Mom was dead. The funeral was a blur of condolences and empty platitudes. Brandon showed up late, his face a mask of feigned sorrow. "Riley, I'm so sorry. Mia had an emergency. I couldn't leave her." I stared at him, numb. "An emergency? Like the one that killed my mom?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Don't be like that." Scarlett understood. She even got out of the car herself. His words ignited something fierce inside me. "We broke up, Brandon. Let's end this." He laughed incredulously. "Over this? Fine. If that's what you want. Don't regret it." 7 days passed in a haze of anger and loss. Brandon texted relentlessly. "Smile, Riley. It's been a week. You're still mad?" I ignored him, posting a cryptic message on social media about betrayal and loss. His calls flooded in. "What nonsense are you posting? My parents invited you for dinner to discuss our marriage. Can you not be petty?" Petty? My mom was dead because of him. I laughed bitterly at the screen. What was so funny? Everything. The man I'd loved for 8 years had shown his true colors. Brandon appeared at my door unannounced, a forced smile on his face. "Riley, stop making trouble. On Valentine's Day, Mia had a stomachache. I couldn't just leave her. Can you be sensible?" Sensible? The word stung like salt in a wound. "Even your mom spoiled me," he added. "Don't mention her. I snapped, slamming the door. But he persisted, reminding me of our upcoming engagement party. 7 days from now, it's all set. Mia even helped convince my parents. I shook my head, memories flooding back. Mom had always been his biggest supporter. When his startup hit a financial snag 3 years ago, she'd withdrawn $15,000 from her retirement savings without hesitation, easing his company's debts. "He's like a son to me," she'd said. Last year, when he had the flu, she nursed him day and night, nearly triggering her own heart episode. We'd been together 8 years. She'd invested in him as much as I had. And how did he repay her? By leaving her in the freezing cold. "Riley, what's wrong with you?" he pressed. "Yes, I'm crazy since you left us on that road." He rolled his eyes. "I just left you there. Scarlett didn't mind. She understood me." Understood him? She'd gone to the market at dawn to buy fresh ingredients for him, wiped his car daily because he was picky about cleanliness. For the invitation, she'd donned her cherished dress, untouched since Dad's passing. But Brandon? He'd dismissed her pleas, leading to her collapse. I walked away, whispering to Mom's photo on my nightstand. "Your greatest wish was to see the world. I'll take your ashes and show you." Reality intruded when work called the next day. It was about the big product launch I'd spearheaded for Brandon's company, pouring in countless late nights and weekends. "Riley, we need you to present it on stage," my boss explained over the phone. "No one knows it better." I agreed reluctantly. It was my creation, the result of years of dedication and innovation. But when I arrived at the event hall, dressed in my professional black blazer and skirt, Brandon took the microphone and announced casually, "Actually, Mia will be handling the speech today instead." Mia? His so-called sister-like childhood friend, who'd somehow become his assistant overnight? She stepped up in her sleek red dress, her long brown hair tied back, looking every bit the opportunist. "What qualifications does she even have for this?" I demanded backstage, my voice low but furious as colleagues shifted uncomfortably around us. The audience clapped politely as Mia started. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us," stealing the spotlight I'd earned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Isn't Riley the project lead? Why is this other woman up there?" Brandon just shrugged when I cornered him afterward in the green room, his tie slightly loosened from the stress. "Riley's a total pro. She doesn't need all that glory and attention. Mia's new to this. She could really use the experience to build her confidence." I stared at him, incredulous. "You specifically informed me to attend and prepare, only to sideline me like this?" He smirked, checking his phone absent-mindedly. "Well, you've been ignoring my calls all week. Anyway, are you ready for our engagement party tonight? We can talk about all this later." Engagement? The nerve of him. "You just handed over my hard-earned credit to Mia. How dare you even mention getting engaged right now?" He let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his temples. "I've told you 100 times, Riley. Mia's just like family to me. Don't be so unreasonable about it. Besides, if it weren't for her smoothing things over with my folks, your mom might not have even approved of us in the first place." Your mom. Those 2 words echoed in my head like a cruel joke, twisting the knife deeper. "Do you even remember her at all, Brandon? Or what you did?" He frowned, finally looking a bit uneasy, his blue eyes narrowing. "Of course I do. Why on earth is her phone turned off? I've tried calling to apologize." I let out a cold, bitter laugh that surprised even me. "Since you left her dying alone in the snow just to rush off to Mia, she'll never answer your calls again. Ever." His face drained of color, the realization hitting him like a punch. "What do you mean by that? Is she really that angry over being left on the road for a little while?" In that moment, I couldn't hold back anymore. I slapped him across the face, the sharp sound reverberating in the quiet room. "You're unbelievable, Brandon. Truly." As news of my pointed social media post about the betrayal and sidelining spread online, the company's stock began to tank rapidly, investors pulling out in droves. Brandon's calls turned from pleading to frantic. "Riley, delete that post right now. Tell everyone it was just a mistake. You're ruining everything." As the date for the engagement party drew closer, a heavy cloud of dread hung over me. I had absolutely no intention of showing up, no matter how much Brandon tried to guilt me into it. The memories of our relationship kept replaying in my mind like an unwanted film reel, pulling me back to how it all began. It was 8 years ago, on a crisp autumn afternoon in a cozy little coffee shop in downtown Denver. I'd been sitting at a corner table, sipping a latte and scrolling through my phone, when Brandon walked in. He was tall and charismatic, with messy brown hair and a warm smile that lit up his green eyes, dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans that made him look effortlessly ambitious. He struck up a conversation about the book I was reading, and before I knew it, we were laughing and talking for hours. He swept me off my feet with his dreams of building his own tech startup, and I fell hard. Mom met him soon after and adored him instantly, her kind blue eyes sparkling whenever he visited. "He's got so much potential, Riley," she'd say with a gentle pat on my hand, her voice full of genuine warmth. She saw him as the perfect match for me, always encouraging our relationship. Over the years, Mom's support for Brandon went beyond words. She backed it up with actions that showed her selfless heart. I remembered vividly when his business hit a rough patch about 5 years in, buried under mounting debts from a failed product launch. He was devastated, pacing our living room with worry lines etched on his face. Without hesitation, Mom dipped into her savings again, loaning him another $10,000 on top of the $15,000 she'd already given earlier, bringing the total to $25,000 that she knew might never be repaid. Family helps family, no questions asked, she'd insist with a reassuring smile, her graying hair tied back in a simple ponytail as she handed over the check. She never once complained or held it over his head. It was just who she was, generous to a fault. Now, as I carefully packed Mom's ashes into a small, engraved urn for the road trip I'd promised her, Brandon's desperate messages kept lighting up my phone screen like unwelcome intrusions. "Riley, please. My parents have been preparing for this engagement party for months now. They've put so much effort into making it special. Don't ruin everything over one mistake." Ruin? The word made my blood boil. He'd already ruined so much more than he could ever understand. In a surge of anger and determination, I logged onto social media and posted about my decision to quit the company, laying out in clear terms how Mia had swooped in and stolen credit for the project I'd poured my soul into for years. The post went viral among industry circles, and almost immediately, the company's stocks began to plummet further, investors fleeing as the scandal gained traction. Brandon called in a rage that evening, his voice crackling over the line. "What the hell are you up to, Riley? This is sabotage. You're destroying everything we've built." "Up to?" I almost laughed through my tears. "I'm just seeking a bit of justice, Brandon. You took everything from me. Now feel a fraction of that loss." The night of the party arrived, held in a modest community hall that his parents had rented for around $5,000, decorated with string lights and simple floral arrangements to give it a warm, intimate feel. Guests mingled awkwardly, sipping drinks and chatting in low tones, but the murmurs grew as my absence became impossible to ignore. Brandon's parents, an older couple with kind but worried expressions, his mom in a floral dress, his dad in a neat suit, tried to keep things light, raising glasses for a hesitant toast. "Riley should be here any minute. She's just running a little late," Brandon lied smoothly, his face flushed as he checked his watch for the umpteenth time. Brandon dialed my number over and over, but I'd blocked him days ago, leaving his calls to ring into silence. "This is way too much. She's taking it too far," he muttered under his breath. Frustration etched on his features. Suddenly, breaking news alerts lit up everyone's phones. Mia had gone live, threatening to end her life and accusing me of stealing her spotlight by revealing the truth about the project. Gasps rippled through the party as the crowd turned toward me in shock. I bolted for the nearby bridge, where she stood on the ledge, a knife trembling in her hand, glinting under the streetlights. "Don't come any closer!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the cold night, drawing a growing circle of onlookers. Her slim figure shook in the tight black dress, blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. Moments later, Brandon appeared, forcing his way through the crowd, his face drained of color. "Riley, please, forgive her for everything or she'll jump right now," he begged, his eyes wide and desperate as he reached out toward me. Forgive? The idea was absurd after all the pain. Then, in a theatrical twist, he added, "If you don't forgive Mia, I'll die with her. I'll jump too." The gathered crowd gasped in horror, phones flashing as they recorded the scene. Reluctantly, under the pressure, I pulled out my phone and deleted my post, watching bitterly as Brandon rushed to Mia's side, pulling her down and comforting her in his arms. "It's all Riley's fault for being so stingy and holding grudges," he whispered to her, loud enough for me to overhear. Stingy? Over the death of my own mother? The hypocrisy burned deep. Later that night, back in the quiet of my apartment, one of my loyal assistants from the company slipped me a folder of incriminating files she'd compiled discreetly. Inside were records showing Mia had been faking her illnesses all along, complete with forged doctor's notes. And worse, she'd embezzled $20,000 from company funds to secretly buy up stocks, betting on the success of my project. "Deliver this straight to Brandon after I've left town," I instructed her firmly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. As more guests trickled into the delayed party venue, Mia suddenly doubled over again, clutching her stomach with exaggerated groans. "Hospital! Get me there now!" she wailed dramatically. Brandon, ever the fool, scooped her up and rushed her out, announcing the postponement of the event to a stunned room. I watched from afar, a small smirk crossing my lips. The truth was finally starting to unravel, thread by thread, and there was no stopping it now. In the days following the chaotic engagement party, reports started flooding the local Denver news outlets and business blogs, painting a picture of drama and delay. The headlines screamed things like, "Brandon Hayes' engagement postponed amid assistant's sudden illness," with photos of the half-decorated hall and confused guests lingering awkwardly. Brandon, ever the devoted one in his own mind, rushed straight to Mia's hospital bedside, where she lay in a private room, hooked up to monitors that beeped softly in the sterile air. He sat by her side, holding her hand, his face etched with worry under the fluorescent lights. "Nothing's more important than your health right now, Mia," he cooed gently, brushing a strand of her brown hair from her forehead. "We'll reschedule everything once you're feeling better. Just focus on resting." She nodded weakly, her eyes fluttering as if the effort was too much. But I knew better. It was all part of her calculated performance. Meanwhile, I dove into my own quiet investigation from the safety of my apartment, poring over public records and anonymous tips from former colleagues who'd grown suspicious of her. Her so-called chronic stomach issues? They turned out to be completely fabricated, backed up by hospital records I'd obtained through a discreet contact. If you doubt the authenticity of these documents, feel free to check with the hospital yourself, a sympathetic doctor had told me over the phone, his voice professional, but tinged with disdain for such deceptions. Mia had been manipulating Brandon for years, using these fake ailments to keep him wrapped around her finger, always ready to drop everything for her emergencies. It was a pattern that explained so much, how she'd wormed her way into his life, his business, and now his heart, all while undermining me at every turn. Not content with the postponement she'd caused, Mia pulled her next dramatic stunt just a few days later, a live-streamed suicide attempt from the rooftop of a high-rise office building in the city center. The video feed showed her perched dangerously on the edge, wind whipping her dress around her legs as she wailed into the camera for all to see. "I've caused such terrible losses to the company. I'm nothing but a sinner who doesn't deserve to live," she cried out, her voice breaking with theatrical sobs that drew a growing crowd below, phones raised to capture the spectacle. Brandon, alerted by a frantic call from one of her friends, arrived breathless, and climbed the stairs to the roof, his face pale with fear. "Mia, please don't jump. Think about everything we have," he begged, inching closer with outstretched hands, his voice trembling as sirens wailed in the distance. As the crowd swelled on the street below, murmuring and pointing upward, I seized the moment from afar and anonymously emailed the embezzlement files to the local news tip lines and Brandon's personal inbox. The documents detailed how she'd siphoned off $20,000 from the company's accounts over months, using the funds to buy up stocks on insider tips, stocks that had initially risen thanks to the very projects I'd developed and led. When the files went public midstream, Mia's facade cracked. "These reports are all fake. It's a setup," she screamed hysterically, waving the printed pages wildly as reporters below shouted questions. But the evidence was ironclad: bank statements, forged signatures, and timestamps that matched her illness episodes perfectly. She'd bet big on the stock rises I'd engineered through late nights and innovative coding, only to watch it all crumble when the truth emerged. The police arrived right in the thick of the drama, their uniforms a stark contrast to the chaos as they carefully approached the rooftop. "You're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud," the lead officer announced firmly, cuffs at the ready while trying to keep the situation calm. Mia resisted wildly, thrashing against their grip. "This is Riley's frame-up. She's jealous and wants to destroy me," she yelled, her eyes darting desperately to Brandon for support. He stood frozen, the files clutched in his hands, betrayal written all over his face as the pieces finally clicked. "You faked everything? The illnesses? The money? All of it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the hurt evident in his slumped shoulders. She lunged toward him one last time, but the officers restrained her quickly and humanely, leading her down the stairs in handcuffs. As she was bundled into the squad car below, she spat venomously through the window. "Riley deserves to die for this. She'll pay." Brandon turned his pleas to me then, bombarding my voicemail with messages that grew increasingly desperate. "Riley, where are you? I see now. I was so wrong about everything. Please, let's talk." But I was already gone, having slipped out of town under the cover of night. I vanished into the open road, taking Mom's ashes with me on a long overdue journey across the U.S. We started in Denver's familiar Rocky Mountains, where the crisp air reminded me of home, then headed west to California's sun-kissed beaches, stopping at national parks and quiet viewpoints along the way. 6 years passed in that quiet reflection, a time of healing where I rebuilt my life piece by piece, finding solace in new hobbies like photography and journaling, far from the corporate grind and toxic relationships. It was during one of those stops, at a small coastal town in Oregon, that I met James. He was a kind-hearted middle school teacher with a modest life, his warm brown eyes and gentle demeanor a stark contrast to Brandon's flashy ambition. Dressed simply in flannel shirts and jeans, he had a quiet strength born from his own losses. His parents had passed young, leaving him to navigate grief alone. We bonded over shared stories by campfires, him understanding the depth of my pain without needing to fix it, offering companionship in the everyday moments like sharing coffee at sunrise or walking along the shore. Our connection grew naturally, grounded in mutual respect and a shared appreciation for life's simpler joys, free from the excess and drama that had defined my past. 6 years had slipped by since that fateful Valentine's Day, and in that time, Brandon's once promising life had completely fallen apart in ways I could have never imagined. His startup, which he'd poured so much energy into building, now teetered on the edge of total bankruptcy, with creditors circling and the company's stocks plummeting to worthless levels amid scandals and lost investor trust. He'd become a shadow of his former self. Rumors in Denver's business circles painted him as isolated and obsessive, haunted by the fallout from Mia's crimes and his own blind mistakes. Desperate for closure, he'd spent those years searching for me relentlessly, hiring private investigators and scouring social media, but I'd covered my tracks well during my travels. Every year, without fail, He'd visit Mom's grave at the quiet cemetery on the outskirts of town, laying fresh flowers and sitting there for hours in silent reflection. Locals who noticed his routine would whisper sympathetically, "That poor man. Riley was always so filial to her mom. It's a shame how things ended." When I finally returned to Denver to prepare for my wedding to James, a simple ceremony planned in a cozy garden venue with close friends and family, fate brought us face to face one crisp autumn afternoon at a local cafe near the old neighborhood. I was sipping coffee with James, discussing our vows, when Brandon spotted me from across the room. His eyes widened in shock, and he approached hesitantly, looking disheveled in a rumpled coat and unshaven face that spoke of sleepless nights. "Riley, it's really you," he stammered, his voice cracking with a mix of surprise and raw emotion. I pulled away instinctively as he reached out, my heart pounding. "Brandon, we ended things years ago, please, just leave us alone." But he didn't back down, dropping to his knees right there in the cafe, drawing stares from other patrons. "Riley, I've waited for you all these 6 long years," he begged, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "Mia was sentenced to prison for her embezzlement and all those lies. I finally see how badly she deceived me, how she manipulated everything. Please, give me another chance to make this right." Deceived? The word hung in the air like a bitter echo, but I shook my head firmly. "It wasn't just Mia who deceived you, Brandon. It was your own choices that led to this. Remember the box I left for you at your office before I disappeared? The one with the note? You never even bothered to open it, did you?" He froze, confusion etching deeper lines on his forehead as he searched his memory. "The box. I thought it was just some old mementos or something trivial. What was in it?" I sighed, pulling out my phone to show him a scanned copy I'd kept for this very possibility. Inside that simple cardboard box had been Mom's official death certificate, stark and clinical, dated precisely on that Valentine's Day when he'd abandoned us in the snow. As he read the details, cause of death, cardiac arrest due to exposure and stress, realization dawned on his face like a slow, agonizing sunrise. Heart attack because of the cold that night? Oh God, Riley, it was because of me. I left her there, he whispered, his voice breaking as tears began to stream down his cheeks unchecked. "I killed her. I actually killed Scarlett with my selfishness." The weight of his words hung heavy between us, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and my heart had long since moved on. James stepped in protectively, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's time to go," he said softly, guiding me away as Brandon remained on the floor, sobbing quietly amid the cafe's hushed whispers. I found myself standing on the balcony of our small Denver apartment, gazing at the sunset painting the Rocky Mountains in hues of orange and pink. James joined me, his steady presence a comforting anchor after years of turmoil. He was dressed in his usual casual attire, a soft gray sweater and jeans that hugged his athletic frame from years of hiking, and he wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "You've been through so much, Riley," he said softly, his voice warm and reassuring, like the first light of morning after a long night. "How are you feeling now that it's all over?" I leaned into him, feeling the tension of the past finally easing from my body. "I've been thinking a lot about what ifs," I admitted, my words coming out slowly as I sorted through the emotions. If Brandon had never come into my life, if that Valentine's Day had never happened, would everything be different? Would Mom still be here, laughing in the kitchen, or would I have ended up in some other kind of pain? James shook his head gently, his brown eyes meeting mine with quiet certainty. "Riley, since that terrible night when you lost Scarlett, your path has changed for the better in ways you couldn't have imagined back then. It forced you to break free, to travel and heal, to find strength you didn't know you had. And look at us now. We built this life together, grounded in trust and real love, not manipulation or betrayal." His words resonated deep within me, logical and true, piecing together the fragments of my journey. We'd met during my travels, bonding over shared hikes and late-night talks about loss and renewal. Over 4 years, our relationship had grown into something solid. No grand gestures, just everyday support. Like him cooking simple dinners after my long days, or us planning quiet weekends exploring national parks with Mom's ashes symbolically along for the ride. "You're right," I replied, turning to face him fully, a genuine smile breaking through for the first time in weeks. "That pain led me here, to you, to a fresh start, where I'm not defined by what happened. I feel free now, James, truly free from those shadows." He kissed my forehead tenderly. "And we'll keep building that future, one day at a time. No more looking back." Hand in hand, we walked inside, leaving the past behind like fading twilight, ready to embrace the dawn of our new life together, simple, honest, and full of promise.